Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are going to be learning about rounding again today, but instead of rounding to the tens place, we're actually going to be rounding all the way up to the hundreds place. Now, I didn't tell you this on day one, but rounding tens is actually harder than rounding to the hundreds, and let me tell you why. Because when you round to the hundreds place, you are adding 2 zeros instead of 1. So rounding to the hundreds place is actually going to be a little bit easier than rounding to the tens place. So I'm excited to begin this lesson with you today. It should be a little bit shorter than last time. So let's go ahead and get right into it. As a review, what is rounding? Rounding is a close estimate or guess of a number, okay? So today, let's add a little bit more jelly beans or a little bit more of the M&Ms to the jar that we were talking about before. Instead of having 45, let's put 485 in the jar. It's a bigger jar. It's a big old thing of just the biggest jar of jelly beans you've ever seen in your life, okay? 485 jelly beans. I don't have time to sit there and count through every single jelly bean to tell you how many exactly are in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to estimate it about how many are in there. Did you hear that? About how many. So if I ask you about how many are in there, you're going to say about 500. You're not going to say there are 485 unless you just don't have anything else going on and you have time to count 485 jelly beans, which I don't think any of us do. You're going to just say it's about 500. About means close. It means a close guess. It means estimate. It means rounding. So when you hear the word about in math, when it says about how many, they want you to round. About means rounding in math, okay? So rounding to the hundreds place is exactly like rounding to the tens place, except we're moving over a place. So instead of underlining the tens today, I bet you can't guess what place we're going to underline. Yes, the hundreds place. We're underlining the hundreds place, and instead of spotlighting the ones place, the BFF, we are going to spotlight the tens place because the tens is way closer to the hundreds. Literally, it's right beside of it. And with your BFF, with your best friend, you are super close to them. You want to be with them all the time. So you are close to them. So the closest place to the hundreds is the tens. So that's why the tens is going to be the BFF today to the hundreds, okay? And the tens is going to tell the hundreds to either round up or stay the same. It's going to either shove up or rest. You know what time it is. It's time for our chant. All right. I want to hear you nice and loud. I'm going to set the mic down so that way we can focus with all of our energy and attention on the hand motions. All right, here we go. Are you ready? I don't think you are. If you need to, you can stand up to do this. Cannot wait. Here we go. 4 or less. Let it rest. 5 or above. Give it a shove. Now, I did not hear everybody on this. We're going to do it one more time. I want to hear you nice and loud, your third grade voice. I want to be able to hear you all the way over here at school, okay? 4 or less, let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. That's my favorite part. Give it a shove because I'm like, whoop, whoop, like we're dancing, okay? So let's go ahead and figure out what it means to round to the hundreds place. All right. Instead of underlining the tens, we're underlining the hundreds place. You also need to know one very important fact today. All of our answers are going to have double zeros in them because the number 100 has 2 zeros in them. Before, when we were rounding to the tens, they all had 1 zero, at least 1 zero. Today, they all have to have at least 2 zeros. That's because the ones and the tens are going to become zeros, all right? So we're going to underline not the tens, but the hundreds place because that's what we're rounding to. The 4s in the hundreds place here. Spotlight the BFF, which is the tens because they're super close together. And the 1 is going to tell the 4 what to do. Is this one 4 or less to let it rest, or is it 5 or above to give it a shove? The 1 here is 4 or less, so it's going to tell the 4 to rest. It's going to stay a 4. And then the 1 is becoming a 0 because it has the spotlight around it. And then the 5 also is going to become a 0, so double zeros. So our answer is 400. That's because 415 comes in between 400 and 500, right? If you have $415, it's going to be closer to $400 than to $500. You're not going to say, oh, yeah, I have almost $500. No, you don't. You have almost $400 because 415 is way closer to 400 than to 500. That's why it would round down to 400, okay? Next, we're going to try this number. Let's underline the 2 because that is in the hundreds place. We're going to spotlight the 6. The 6 is going to tell the 2 what to do. 265 comes in between 200 and 300. Those are the 200s that comes in between. We need to decide, is it closer to 200 or 300? Let's figure it out. The 6 is going to help us figure that out. The 6 tells the 2 to what? Is this 4 or less? Let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. 5 or above, we're going to give it a shove because this is 6, and 6 is bigger than 5. 6 is telling the 2 to shove up. What comes after 2? 3. And then the 6 and the 5 become zeros. Our answer is 300, okay? What happens if it's a 2-digit number, though? And I say, hey, I want you to round 92 to the nearest hundreds. Well, as you see, we're still going to underline the hundreds place, even though there's nothing there. And we're going to spotlight the 9. And the 9 is going to tell this little, if you want to put like a little ghosty 0 in there, like a little ghost, like, ooh, little 0 in here, okay, to either round to 0 or round up to a 1. That's what you're basically doing, okay? So 92, is 92 closer to 0 or to 100? 92 is closer to 100. So this number would round up to 100. But if this number was like a 3, let's say it's 32, that 3 would tell that 0 to stay a 0, and it would actually round down to 0. So whenever you have a 2-digit number, and you're not really going to have this much to round to the hundreds place, they might ask you, hey, is 92 closer to 0 or 100? It's closer to 100, okay? All right, let's back to normal. 154. Let's underline the 1, spotlight the 5, draw an arrow. 5 or above. Is this 5 or above? Yes, it's in the rhyme. This is a 5. So 5 or above, we're going to give the 1 a shove up to a 2, and the 5 and the 4 both become zeros. Our answer is 200 here, okay? Let's see what happens here, all right? We've got 5 underlined. We've got 1 circled. The 1 is going to tell the 5 to do what? Is this 4 or less? Let it rest. 5 or above, give it a shove. Remember, you're looking at the circled number. The circled number is the spotlight number. It's the one telling the other number what to do. So the 1 here is the star, and he's telling the 5, hey, I'm 4 or less. I'm going to let you rest, okay? 5 is just going to stay a 5. The 1 and the 9 both become what? 2 zeros because we are rounding to the hundreds, and 100 has zeros. All right, after this, let's underline the 9, and let's spotlight the other 9. This 9 tells this 9 to bump up. Okay, now here is where it gets tricky because there are no more hundreds after this, right? 9 can't tell the other 9 to bump up to a 10 because we can't put a 10 in that hundreds place. So what it's going to do is it's going to bump up to the next hundreds, which what comes after 900? If I add 100 to 900, what would that become? 1,000. So it's actually going to round to 1,000. And this answer does have 3 zeros in it, but remember what I said. Hundreds has at least 2. It can have 3, but most of the time it's going to have just 2 zeros. All right, let's practice rounding this to the nearest hundreds. Here we go. Underline the 3, spotlight the 4. The 4 tells the 3 to do what? Rest or bump up? Tells it to rest. So we're going to let the 3 rest. The 4 and the 5 are both going to become zeros, and then the 2 is just going to drop straight down. Just like before, the 2 doesn't change. Thousands place is typically going to stay the same, okay? So our answer here is 2,300. The 4 is 4 or less, so we let the 3 rest. 2 zeros because we're rounding to the hundreds place, not the tens. And the 2 just drops straight down because this is not a 9. If this is not a 9 bumping up, then it's just going to drop down like normal, okay? Let's look at this number, 4,489. We're going to underline the 4, spotlight the 8. The 8 is going to tell the 4 to do what? Think to yourself, is 8 4 or less or 5 or above? It's 5 or above, so it's going to tell the 4 to give it a shove. What comes after 4? 5. The 8 and the 9 become zeros, and you drop this 4 straight down. I think this is our last one, so let's get through it. Are you ready? We're underlining the 8 because this is in the ones, tens, hundreds place, and we're rounding to the hundreds. We're going to spotlight the 3. The 3 is going to tell the 8 what to do here. The 3 tells the 8 to rest or bump up. It tells it to rest because this is 4 or less, so we're going to let the 8 rest. It gets to stay in 8. The 3 and the 6 become zeros, and this 8 in the thousands place just stays the same. 8,800. I hope this video helped explain how to round to the hundreds place. You're going to also watch a short video about me actually showing you how to round them on paper, so what you need to do step by step. Underline the hundreds place, spotlight the tens, draw an arrow from the tens to the hundreds, and then decide, is it bumping up or resting, and then making the ones and the tens into zeros. So if you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching.